Hi, I'm Jez Rose. I'm a canine behaviour specialist and I'm here with Coco, who's a working Cocker Spaniel. This is Lorraine, her owner, and Lorraine's got a bit of trouble when she's out walking with Coco because Coco doesn't really pay attention to her. This is a really common problem that many dog owners present. Their dog's far too busy sniffing around and doesn't pay any attention. So we're going to work a little bit with Lorraine now to get Coco to learn to pay attention to Lorraine. So Lorraine, what we'll do is, I know you feed Coco biscuits, like kibble, so what you can start doing is, instead of feeding her those in a bowl at home, you can take them out with you on a walk. Okay, so you take a handful of these out, put them in your pocket, and you can start feeding those. So I'm going to give you some biscuits, but I'm also, just to start with, going to give you some cheese, all right? This is Pecorino Romano cheese, okay? Very posh cheese. Oh, she nearly got a free bit there. Oh, you can't have that. All right, so if you keep a handful of that and the biscuits together, all right? Now, the secret is you've always got to have some in your hand, okay? So you can have some in your pocket, but always keep some in your hand. Make sense? So we're going to walk around, and every time Coco looks at you like this, you can ask her to sit if you want to. If you'd rather not the jumping up, you're going to say good girl and give her a piece of cheese, all right, or a piece of biscuit, whatever. So you can tell her she's a good girl. That's great. And now let's walk on off. Okay, and what we're going to try and do is keep her attention. All right, so every time she looks at you like that, so tell her she's a good girl. That's great. Give her a piece of cheese. That's good. Well done. Lovely. And just keep looking at her head, all right? Oh, yes, there we go. Yes, good girl. Lovely, really nice. So keep looking at her head. Yes, good girl. And so to begin with, it's going to be a really high ratio. We're going to be feeding quite a lot, all right? If she jumps up, you did absolutely the right thing. Pull that hand away, tell her to sit, and then she can have that cheese. As soon as she looks at you, we're going to say yes and give her a piece of cheese. That's lovely. Well done. Well done. Oh. Try not to choke on the biscuit. There we go. All right. That's great. Okay, wonderful. Now what I want you to do after a few repetitions of this is, if you can, put your hand either behind your back or just out of sight so she's not looking at your hand, but keep a good handful of those biscuits and just keep looking at her head. That's it. Yes, good girl. Lovely, really good. And you don't want to miss any of those opportunities. So keep looking at her head, and each and every time she looks at you, you're going to feed, all right? So you're feeding quite a lot to begin with, and this is why feeding her dinner or her breakfast, her daily meal on a walk, is brilliant, because, you know, you've got to give it all to her anyway. If at any point she begins pully or sniffy, that's okay, because that's the walk that we want for her, right? You know, she needs to sniff, she needs to kind of roam around and look. But we want to try and train that actually, rather than just being this annoying thing at the end of the lead, that actually you're a really cool thing, a part of her walk. And all we're doing here is just reinforcing her checking in on you. So when she checks in on you, she gets a little bit of reinforcement for that too. All right? That's perfect, Lorraine. That's really good. And you just keep doing that. That's wonderful with her pulling your hand away. That's great. And then she learns, oh, I don't get it when I jump up, but I can have it when I sit. But make sure we do reinforce now. So we need to tell her she's a good girl and she gets that treat. And if you have any problems at all getting her attention, you can use squeaky tennis balls. Oh, good girl. And as soon as she looks at you, you say, good girl, and you give her a little piece of your treat. All right? You could use calling her name, making little good girl kissy noises. That's great. And make sure that you just don't miss her watching you. All right, so I would do this for the first couple of days of your walk. Okay, so don't think about going places, think about going out to train. Does that make sense? Yeah. So even if it was just up and down this path tons of times and around all of the grassy areas here, so let's try walking and see if we can get a little bit more attention. That's great. So there we go. Good girl. That's lovely. And remember, put that hand behind your back if you can, so that she's looking at you rather than your hand. Yes, good girl. That's lovely. Really nice. All right. And just with any dog behavior, Lorraine, you know, we're going to reinforce the things we want to see more of, and we want to see more of looking at you. So she thinks every now and again, oh, that's worth just looking in. That's really good. If she does sniff, like she's sniffing now, that's okay. You know, that's really normal and really important for dogs to do that. So allow her to sniff. If, I don't know, you need her attention for whatever reason, you've got to run away or you've got to, I don't know, cross the street or something, then you can use those kissy noises. But each time she looks at you, you want to be reinforcing with some more treats, all right? This is lovely. Look how much more she's looking at you now. It's lovely, isn't it? A secondary part of teaching attention like this is that actually the dog stops pulling on the lead so much, because there's less need for them to try and charge ahead and find something interesting, because they find you so much more interesting, right? So for the first maybe day or two, you're going to feed at quite a high ratio, okay? So pretty much every time she looks at you, And then we want to start to, obviously I don't want your walks to be constantly feeding your dog, all right? Otherwise you're never going to get anywhere and you'll get a sore back. So we need to phase out those, the reinforcement, all right, with the food. And we can swap that just to the good girl, okay? Which is why I've asked you to say good girl and then give her a treat, because we paired good girl with getting a nice tasty treat, okay? So what I would like you to do now is perhaps every other time, and then begin a bit randomly. So sometimes you say good girl and give her a treat, and sometimes you just say good girl, all right? Every time she looks at you, so good girl, well done, and then she can walk on. And then remember to keep looking at the head. Oh, good girl. That's really nice. That's perfect. And then we do that randomly, okay, all different times. So rather than it being regularly every single time or regularly every 5 times, we can do it completely randomly, all right? So maybe every 3 times, and then every 5 times, and every 1 time, and then every 10 times, every time she looks at you. But it's really important for the beginning part that we do it every single time to really, really get that behavior on cue, all right?
If I stop treating Coco, she then reverts back to being aloof and going off and putting her nose to the floor totally again. So how do I then gain her attention without feeding her with lots of treats, or do I use treats? What is the process?
That's a very good question. We find that if you take the treats away too quickly, okay, then the dog goes, oh, that game's finished now, I don't get the treats anymore, okay?
Oh, right.
Hey, which is why it's important that we slowly phase them out and go to that random reinforcement or variable reinforcement schedule. It's a very posh word, which basically means just randomly treat the dog, all right? So, Coco, hey, yes, good girl. So we might give a treat one time, but when she looks at us next time we don't, and we go to a random schedule, all right? And then when your dog's really got it reliably, we can increase the criteria for that, that variation. So if, for example, we're doing every 10 times, and then 5 times and 3 times and 9 times and whatever, but the longest period of time is 10 times, we can start to escalate that and say, well, let's try 15 times, let's try 20 times, let's try. So the dog gets better and better at performing with actually a greater latency between the behavior and the treat. Does that make sense? Yeah, so we keep going, we upscale. Hey, chicken, you're gonna hurt your neck, well done. We upscale 10 times, 15 times, 20 times, 30 times, but keep it randomly within that, all right? This is an ideal location because there are hardly any distractions. It's super, super important. It doesn't matter what you're trying to train your dog to do or what sort of behaviors you're trying to adjust. You want to try and do it in as neutral environment as possible. If there's dogs running around and kids playing and people shouting, she's going to be looking all over the place, right? And obviously working, every plane or bird that goes over, I imagine she has a good old look at that, right? Absolutely. Every mouse that she sees. So you want to try and do it in an environment where there is as little as possible to distract her, okay? And then you get really, really great success, lots of great success, and she learns much faster. And then we can take it out in the real world on our regular walk, right? If you find that she really doesn't want her regular dinner, you know, her biscuits, her kibble, and she finds actually, you know what, squirrels and smells and being outside generally is much more exciting than that boring old kibble, that's okay. We can upscale for the training, all right? So maybe, please give me a treat, mummy. Good girl. We can look at perhaps some cheese. Pecorino Romano is my favorite cheese. I have to thank Jean Donaldson, one of my mentors, for that, because she suggested that. It's an amazing cheese. Or perhaps some of the commercially available products like liver treats or pet munchies or something like that, all right? If your dog, not the case for her, but if your dog does not eat at all when they're outside and doesn't really like treats, then we can use cool toys that they like. Maybe, like one of my dogs, they're absolutely obsessed with a squeaky ball, then squeaking ball can be the thing. Every time you look at you, you give the ball a little squeak, oh, good girl, and they can have a little bounce with the ball, or yeah, good girl, a little run around with the ball, all right? So whatever your dog finds particularly reinforcing or rewarding, that's the thing we're going to use. But for you, it's food. Yum, yum, yum. Yes, it is. You want a piece because you're looking at me? Good girl. Oh, look at that. I guess ultimately, to wrap up, Lorraine, what we have to remember is that unfortunately for you, I'm really sorry, but she finds squirrels pretty interesting, and you're like not very interesting at all when you're outside. When you're inside, she might find you really interesting, but she sees you for like, I don't know, 6 or 7 hours a day, right? She sees squirrels hardly ever, and she sees smelly stuff, whatever that is over there, hardly ever. So you don't even get a look in when we're outside, all right? So to start with, we're gonna have to do lots of training. It's not something that happens just magically, you know. I mean, we did pretty well here today. You did fantastically well, in fact, and you carry on that now for the next few days, and certainly over the next few weeks. But it's always worth just continually training your dog. You know, it should be fun. It shouldn't be about thinking, oh, I've got to put 10 minutes in my day today. I'm really busy. How am I going to train the dog? You just go out with a handful of biscuits or cheese on your walk, and you do really fun training sessions. Maybe you think, I know, every now and again when she looks at me, I'm going to say, you are such a good girl, Coco, and give her a treat. And that's how you keep it going throughout the whole of the dog's life. All right?